You're the best. You're a star. You're on top. Somebody bring you some ham. Bonus points if you know that reference. I'll tell you though, it's 30 Rock, Liz Lemon. Love her. Welcome to this special Facebook live stream where I am sharing answers to your questions. Those of you who are a part of the Maeve's Mission Scholarship Contest, your third and final step to complete your application because the contest is still happening if you're watching this live for 2 more days, is to ask me a question and to get to know me better. This is your chance to interview me, because when you hire a mentor or coach, the most important thing, the most important question to ask, always, I share this all the time, is to ask yourself, is this someone I feel like I can learn from? Is this someone I feel like I can learn from? And if the answer is yes, then that's your person. That's your person. It's not, it doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. Allowing yourself to choose somebody you feel like you can learn from. So you've got to know somebody enough to know if you can learn from them, right? And so you also want to be able to trust that they can help you grow. I'm looking at my notes here. They can help you grow and achieve the success that is waiting for you. And so this is all about getting to know me better and you interviewing me in any way, right? Like, you can ask me a personal question. Some of you have asked some hilarious ones, which I love, and I'm going to get to. Business question, how I work with my clients, whatever. So if you haven't yet asked a question and you are watching this, then please make sure that you do that. But for those of you who have, today is your day, baby. So, you're the greatest. No, that's backwards, but you're the greatest. You're the best. You put the awe in awesome. And now let's talk about your questions. Number 1. Okay. Let's see. I'm getting them pulled up here. Had some new ones come in. All right. So Ashley asks, as a mama, wife, friend, family member, incredible businesswoman, thank you, Ashley, and nonprofit founder, how do you stay accountable when at times it seems like there's so much to get done? I know you work with Julie, yes, who is wonderful, and you utilize tools to stay organized, but at times you have to feel like there just wasn't enough time in the day. Do you work with a mentor to keep you accountable and moving forward, or do you have systems in place that you found to be successful? Yes, the answer is yes, Ashley. Yes to both. Yes, I work with a mentor to keep me accountable, and yes, and moving forward. And yes, I have systems in place that I have found to be successful. I have found that I need really both. Mallory says, love the mug. Thank you. You're the best. See how many times I can use this in an applicable way today in context. So I work with a mentor. I am a firm believer in having accountability for myself and also having support for myself so that I can show up as the best version of myself for my clients. And so I do work with a mentor one-on-one, and I have her hold me very accountable to things. And I'm really good at being accountable for things when I know I have someone to answer to. I'm really good at talking myself out of things when I don't have someone to answer to. So I know that about myself, and I know that I have prioritized investing in myself, my business, to help me stay on track with my priorities, if that makes sense. I also have systems in place on a daily basis. You know, Julie and I are remote. We live about an hour and a half away from each other. So we see each other once or twice a month. And so the rest of the time we're communicating, you know, virtually. And we're always improving our systems. We're always improving our communications. But I have used a couple of systems to help me as pretty much as long as I've been in business full time. I use FreshBooks for my invoicing and time tracking and expense tracking. And I use Basecamp for my project management. It's a collaborative tool. It's great. You know, both of them cost $10 10 to 20 bucks a month, I think, each. And I find though that like, they're only as effective as I am. So, it's always about improving and looking at where I can be held more accountable. And then when I've done something a few times, systematizing it so that it's not starting over from scratch every time and like a lot of decision overwhelm. So I find that continuing to work with mentors who are ahead of me in business, so that they can teach me what they've learned and what's worked for them, and teaching me things where I might be weak, or I really respect the way that they've done something. Like, that's super important to me. And also it's important for me to have their eyes on my business and not just like read a book or, you know, watch a webinar or whatever and be like, oh yeah, I should implement that. Like, I know that I do best when I have somebody like calling me out on my stuff and holding me accountable, because otherwise I'm probably going to procrastinate, just being honest. But when the systems and structures are in place, I am super productive on unlimited time. And so I hope that answers your question. If you have any follow-ups to that, you can ask me. Anita says, you mentioned you had an Etsy shop. Please tell me about it and your experience with it. How long did you have it for, and what products did you sell? Yeah, great question. So Anita, that Etsy shop is actually still in operation. So the story is that I started a natural cleaning products business with a partner and several years ago. And we developed this awesome natural cleaner. And when I got pregnant with Maeve, I decided something had to go because I was doing so many different things. And so I checked in with myself and I decided that I was going to hand the business over to her, because it had originally been her idea and we were working on it together, and I wanted to turn it over so that she could run with it. You know, if you've followed me for very long, you know I was super, super sick and very depressed from the hormones. The hormones made me very depressed at the beginning of my pregnancy with Maeve. And so I was like barely able to get off the couch, and I was like looking to simplify, and that just seemed like something that I could do. And so I did that, and it's still running. And actually, this is something that I'm looking forward to being able to share with you all when my former business partner is ready. I've reached out to her and I've said, hey, like, I want to share this business with my community because I really believe in the product and I'd love to feature you. And she's like building a house and moving right now, and she's got a baby. And so she's like, let's wait a few months until I'm really ready to, you know, feeling like my systems and structures are in order, so that she can show up fully for that. So that will be coming. I was very happy with Etsy. I set up the shop myself, with people, you know, finding me who didn't know me. Yeah, I think that answers your question. As far as Etsy goes, it was great. And really, really proud of the product, really proud of how Etsy helped us build it. Okay. Nancy. Hello, Nancy. You're the best. Says, have you ever had a client with a business idea or niche that you felt was totally not feasible or was clearly the wrong fit for that client, and how did you address it? How did it turn out in the end? Very cool. Okay, so have I ever had a client with a business idea or niche I felt was totally not feasible or was clearly the wrong fit for that client? How did you address it? Yeah. So I really believe that, this is going to sound like kind of cheesy, but I really believe that, you know, my role is to help you uncover what's already inside you, because I do believe that we each have, again, sounds cheesy, but I do believe we each have unique gifts. I do believe we each have unique talents. I do believe that, you know, you are already far more capable than you know or give yourself credit for. And so have there been times when clients have come to me and have said, like, I have this idea, and my intuition says, you're the greatest, but maybe this isn't the greatest fit for you, you know? Yeah, absolutely. That happens. I also know, because I was a full-time career counselor for years, that there's an exploration process that's very important. That's why I work with people for 6 months, because sometimes what people need is to just show up and get a plan and walk away and execute. And that's great. And that's why I have the half-day intensives. And, we lay out marketing plans and we write, we can do copywriting and a lot of those things from my background as a marketer. But a lot of times what we also need is the space to explore and work through our stuff and try things out and go, well, that was okay, but maybe not my favorite, or, oh my gosh, I actually hate that. Right? And so, if you're doing some of the exploring process, then that's why 6 months works so well. And so I stay open to that. Like, if there was something that I felt was a horrible, horrible idea, and like I thought it was dangerous or really wrong in some way for a client to explore, I would definitely say something. But a lot of times what I find is that my clients figure it out really fast on their own. And so, so there's that safe space for them to explore. And I am very intentional about like keeping that space. So it's definitely a dialogue back and forth. But what I find usually is that my clients just more need my support with trusting themselves that their idea is like actually a good one, and that they can trust that they have the idea for a reason, than they do for me to tell them, no, this is wrong or you shouldn't do it. Does that make sense? I hope so. If you have follow-up questions, let me know. I would say it's actually more often like that they have an idea, and I think it's really good and I totally believe in them, but they spend a lot of time questioning it. And that's often where they get held back, rather than the fact that they chose a bad business idea. Because I just honestly, I just don't see that much. Like, I can't think of a time in the last 2 years where I was like, oh my gosh, this sucks. And like, I don't know how to help her because I think it's so bad. Like, that just didn't happen. Because you are so much more like capable and powerful, and in tune with your gifts than you know. And so I know that part of my role is to help you own that and believe in yourself and help you build a business around it. Cool. All right. Bonus question, and probably the more important one. I love this so much, Nancy. Red or white? We've seen you drink both in live streams, so inquiring minds need to know your preference. Perfect. My preference to whether I like red or white wine is yes. So, I would say that like when I first started, because I was a goody two shoes. I did not drink when I was like below age or whatever. Like, I was like really, really good. And it is what it is now. And at the time I was like really proud of that and whatever. Anyway, I always like was really drawn to wine because I just thought it was really cool and classy. And then I started learning about it. And often when you start learning about it, I have a friend who at the time managed a wine shop, and he had weekend tastings, and now he runs his own tapas bar, restaurant, wine bar. And so he had tastings, and usually you start with the sweet, right, to develop your palate. And so that was true for me. But what I found really quickly was that I really wanted to like red wine. And so I do. And what I also found is that I love big red wines. I also really like big whites. So that's usually like a really big, oaky, creamy, buttery Chardonnay. I have expensive tastes. I come by that honestly. The grandma I shared with you a couple of weeks ago, I just found out she was a model for Saks. I just found that out. And I was like, oh, gee, no wonder like I'm drawn to shop at, their outlet. Anyway, I digress. I like red and white wine. I'm not super, super picky, meaning like if someone has something and they offer me a glass, I'm going to be like, no, I don't want that because it's whatever. But if I'm buying something, it's going to be a big Chardonnay or like a big, probably like Californian red. Or I also actually really like Australian wines. I get to visit my sister a couple of years ago over there, and we traveled down to Adelaide, and that's one of the big wine growing regions. And I fell in love with like the huge Shirazes, and like those just like a meal. It's a meal in a glass. So anyway, that's the answer to that. Okay. Sherry says, have you ever had a client you thought was the right fit for coaching, but later realized they weren't? How did you deal with it? Love this question. Love this question, Sherry. Have I ever had a client I thought was the right fit for coaching, but later realized they weren't? What I think you mean, Sherry, and this is how I'm going to answer the question, is I thought they were the right fit for like hiring me to be their coach, and later found out that they weren't. And how did I deal with it? No, I have not. I have had clients who had a harder time showing up for themselves than others, for sure. But I usually, I would say that us choosing each other along the way, like every time a client and I have both chosen each other, it's been a relationship that's resulted in a lot of fruit for that client. And, you know, sometimes it looked really different than they thought it would. But they, you know, all of my clients have been incredible women, and I feel really, really grateful for that. And I think that, you know, over the course of working with anyone for 90 days or 6 months or whatever it is, like your original expectations are going to change once you get into the relationship, and once you get into realizing, oh, like I thought that what I needed to do was a webinar, but actually like I'm just terrified of sales, for instance, you know, so you shift and you work on that instead. So that's what I mean by like them thinking it maybe looks different than they thought it would, right? Which is why they hired me, right? Because they're not really sure what to do next or where to go. And so that's the clarity coming in. But no, I would say that I feel like every person got some great results and was very clear about like their next steps when they left, right? They were clear on what they'd accomplished during our time together and where they could go from there when they graduated from the program. Let me know if that makes sense. For all of these questions, any of you watching live or on the replay, if you have follow-ups to these, is it triggering something for you? Ask. Nancy says, yes, it makes sense. Mallory says exploration is key. I went through that. Yeah, totally. And nothing wrong with expensive taste. Thank you for validating that, Nancy. Mwah. You're the best. Okay. Mallory says, I know you've mentioned in coaching sessions with me and on live streams that you've had different business ideas running through your mind at the same time. How do you know which idea is the right one to focus on at that time? Great question, Miss Mallory. And I would say that it comes down to processing. Yeah, I mean, there are so many different things that I could do. There are so many different things that I have interests in. And there are so many different like hobbies that I could like make a business around, right? And I would say that early on in my entrepreneurial journey, I thought that everything I spent any time on, I had to make a business around. Hey, Erin, you're the best. Everything I thought I had to make a business around. What I have learned is that focus is key, right? Which is why I talk about clarity and focus so much, because where you put your focus, where you put your attention, that thing is going to grow. And so I think a lot of it comes down to like, how much am I actually enjoying the work, or or do I think I will enjoy the potential work, and then trying it out? Because like life with passion is the thing that like, I shared this on a podcast interview yesterday. Like I could do it 23 hours a day and like sleep 1 hour a day if that was like possible for me. Like I love it. I would love to be here with you guys all the time and on coaching calls and like just do that forever and ever and ever, you know? And I love that I get to do that. That's my joy. You know, there have been times in other businesses where like I wasn't as excited about what I was showing up to do that day. So I think a lot of it has to do with how much you enjoy the work, to be honest, and then giving yourself permission to go like, I'm going to focus on this right now because I know that as this grows, then I can do other things. but if I try to do them all right now because I have a fear of missing out, or because I feel like now's the time to do all of them, then I'm going to be honest with myself actually and say that like, I'm not going to do any of them well. And I have definitely been there at points in my life, right? Like if you try to do too many things, you're not going to do any of them right or well. And I think giving yourself permission to go like, I'm going to focus on this one thing for this amount of time. And then I'm going to check back in, right? Instead of waking up every day and going, am I making the wrong decision? Am I making the wrong decision? It's that whole idea of like deciding, right? To commit. To decide literally means to cut off and to decide. Yes. What ignites you at the time? Yeah. And then when you're having a bad day, you can go, well, cool, I committed to do this for this long, so it's okay that I'm having a bad day. Everybody has bad days, but I still know that I love this, and yeah. Abby says, what is the one most important thing to make a coaching relationship successful? I touched a little bit on this earlier, but I believe that it is, first of all, that the client believes that they can learn, that you believe you can learn from whoever you hire as your coach. So from your perspective, that's the one thing. But I would say you believe you can learn from the person and you show up for it, meaning you show up as being open to learn. So you believe you can learn and you are willing to learn, and you show up, you ask for what you need, and you are open to feedback, because like, as some of you all were discussing in the group, I'm really honest. Like, I'm not mean. No one's ever called me mean. And if you do, you're mean. Just kidding. People have called me way worse than that online because I have trolls. But I would say like that you are willing to show up to learn. That's where the relationship becomes successful. That you trust your coach and that you're willing to show up to follow up in that trust, to learn. Because you're not hiring a coach to prove to them that you already know everything you need to learn, right? You're hiring a coach to learn. You're hiring a coach to learn about yourself. You're hiring a coach to learn, well, whatever that coach is for. And, in my case, you're hiring me to learn about your business, about how to grow a business online. You're hiring me for clarity. You're hiring me for focus. You're hiring me for accountability. But you're also, my clients also learn a lot about their lives too. That's just what happens, part of the process, part of my training, part of the way I coach. You wind up learning a lot more about like yourself and your relationships and, your strengths and your weaknesses. And it's not just about, here's how to build a landing page, right? We go deep because I'm like a deep person. And so are you. And that's why my clients come to me. So Abby, I would say it's that you believe you hire someone you believe you can learn from, and then you show up to learn, and you're open to that process and what it looks like. From the coach's perspective, I would say the single most important thing to make a coaching relationship successful is that the coach is going to show up 100% for you. And that you, and again, that you trust that they will. So that's what I would say. Number one. Mallory says 90-day period, ? I definitely learned more about myself through coaching with Christine. I love it, Mallory. Thank you for sharing that. 90-day period. I think it depends, Mallory, on what you're doing. Like a 90-day period, yes, for like a starting business before you went somewhere else, to another idea. But I think like for me, for where I am in business, like this year I decided I had, 2 foci, at the beginning of the year. And, that was to work one-on-one, with my clients and serve my one-on-one clients really, really well, and to write my book. And so I always come back to those things when something shiny jumps in front of me. Does it align with those goals? And so, for me, it was a year. So I think it depends. All right. Let me take a drink. Meryl says, how do you differentiate business coach from life coach and from all the other coaches out there today? Okay, Meryl, I think what you mean is how do you differentiate business coach from life coach? Like, what makes them different, or how do you know what's what? I would say you want to look at first of all, people can call themselves anything. People can call themselves anything. The coaching industry is unregulated at this point, and it's very fast growing. So somebody could jump in and call themselves a business coach who's never started a business, and that happens a lot, you know? But I think that what you need to look at, I will say the flip side of that is that there's a low barrier to entry. So it also means that it's easier than ever to start your own business, which is awesome. And, you know, if you're thinking about coaching or building a coaching business, you already have things that you're able to teach about. The important part is just teaching what you know, right? And not just calling yourself something and not teaching what you've never done. So not to put any pressure on it there, just to say, like, it's important to be congruent. It's important to teach what you've already done. I have already started businesses, so I teach how to start businesses, right? Online. And, you know, there are a lot of other things that I could teach. There are a lot of things you could teach. What's the most exciting? I would say, like, I call myself a business and success coach, but do I include a lot of life coaching in my business and success coach mentorship? Totally. Like, there's a ton of it in there because of my background, because I was a professor, because I was a career counselor, because I've done a ton of my own work, right? And because I have the teacher counselor personality type, like that stuff just comes out. And so I think how do you differentiate? You ask what you need. You ask what you need. If you're like looking for a mentor, if that's what you mean, then you ask yourself, well, what do I need? And who is getting the results that I want? Do I want clarity? Do I want focus? Do I want someone who's a webinar expert? Do I want someone who's a Facebook ads expert? Do I want someone to help me with my rediscovering my inner child? Like, and look at what they talk about. Look at the results that somebody you might be looking to hire talks about, and ask yourself, is that what I need? One of the things that's been so much fun for me with this process, and I have loved so much, is like you guys asking these questions, and what I've read in your applications are very much things that I teach. And so I love that we're getting to talk about these things like clarity, like focus, like simplifying things, right? Like, how do you get it all done, you know, but also how do you believe in yourself, and how do you make sure that you're choosing the right business idea, and all of that stuff. Those things are so much like right in line with my work. And so I love that those are some of the things that are coming up for you all, and those are the questions that you're asking. Hope that makes sense, Meryl. Let me know. Jacqueline says, what is your biggest tip to help clients overcome fear of being who they are in their business? What is your biggest tip to help clients overcome fear of being who they are in their business? I love that. And my answer is going to be get support. Here's why. Because fear is very powerful. And if it's been holding you back for a long time, or any length of time, chances are it's probably not just going to go away on its own. It's probably not going to go away without some action to build your confidence, to overcome that fear. And you might not, I'm speaking from experience from what I see with my clients and my community, you might not have the clarity or the confidence to go make that first action, the second one, then the third one, unless you have somebody you know you're accountable to. And somebody who's gone, all right, let's look at what's going on here, and what's a step that we can take to address that. Because a lot of times, like, we're just going to keep holding ourselves back because it's what we've always done. It doesn't mean that we're bad. It doesn't mean that we're wrong. It means that it's a pattern. And patterns can change. Habits change, right? But often they don't change without some support and some help. And so that is why I say that. That is why I say that my number one biggest tip to help clients overcome fear of being who they are in their business is to get support. Now, if I'm working with a client already and they're afraid to be who they are in their business, then we're going to look at what are some steps that are not going to make them throw up. What's one step that can make them that they could take right now. And then we're going to build on that after they realize that they didn't throw up or they didn't die, because they might literally feel like they're going to pass out from fear. I know I have felt that way at times when I've seen a snake, even if it was a totally harmless snake. We have that fear mechanism. It's very powerful. And so with a client, I'm going to say, great, like, let's look at what we could do right now. Let's look at what the fear is and let's follow that through. You know, those are a couple of the techniques that I would use, but I'm also always going to make sure that, that they're feeling really supported and careful, like, to never push them too far, to where it's like beyond, it's so far beyond the comfort zone that it's just like super, super like painful and raw, because it's not the point. Like, you're not building a business so you feel crappy. You're building a business so that you feel passionate and you feel excited and you are energized by it. So it's a process. Yeah, but it's one that I see and get the privilege of working through with my clients a lot. Fear to show up as who you really are is a really, really common. And I struggled with that a while ago because I felt like I needed to show up as like uber, like serious, professional. I think I've shared before that, like, I thought that if I was like all kooky and crazy, then I wouldn't be classy. And like, I really wanted to be classy. And my coach was like, don't you think there's more than one way to be classy? What's wrong with you? And I was like, oh, that's true. It's kind of funny. Okay. I mean, they didn't say what's wrong with you, but you know, ha ha ha. Right. Anyway. So like, we get these stories in our heads about this stuff. And, hey, now I'm like, this is me. Cool. People don't like it. Awesome. If you like it, great, right? But it took me a while to get there, and I know how to work through that with my clients as well. Mallory says, I have a question I forgot to ask. Do you think you should have more than one mentor for different parts of your business, more than one coach? Oh, that's a great question, Mallory. It depends. It depends is my answer, and here's why. You don't want to get conflicting advice, and if you have a problem with focusing, getting more than one mentor could really overwhelm you. I think it depends on what kind of support you're going to get. Are you getting like a business coach who's going to help you with all parts of your business and like support you along the way? Or are you getting somebody who's really going to help you with like one thing? Like, they're really going to help you win at Facebook ads, and that's it. You know, maybe they're teaching you how to use Facebook ads. Great. Or maybe they're just teaching you like how to build out a sales funnel. Great. But I think a lot of times if you're starting out in business, you just want to work with one person so that you don't get overwhelmed. You want to work with somebody who's going to get you the results you feel like you need right now. You know, if it's like hitting a certain income level, like you want to have 5K months, or you want to, you know, do webinars, or you want to run your first Facebook ads, or, you know, those types of things, challenges, videos, websites, getting those things set up. A lot of times, like, those types of things that I work with my clients on the strategy part, as well as like the self-doubt and fear part, right? Those are the things that I do. But then I know like some coaches who have a ton of coaches, maybe they have one business coach and maybe they have one, you know, life coach, and then they have a relationship coach or whatever. So I think it depends on the person. But I think that we probably, because we love learning about ourselves, like, and we love self-improvement and all of that, I think we probably have a tendency to seek out like more support than can actually be beneficial a lot of the time, because we just don't want to miss out. But the truth is, again, it comes back to focus, right? And like, what you focus on is going to grow, what you focus on expands. So it's important to be aware of, I guess, choosing the right person that you feel like can get you what you need at the time, and trusting that those other people are still going to be available when you're ready for that. Because it's a journey. Erin says, yes, support, support, support. Love it. So true. Erin says, the power suit woman. Yeah, totally. Mallory says, you're classy with your wine. Thank you. By the way, this is not wine in here right now. It's my organic green jasmine tea, which is like my daily ritual. Mallory says, makes sense, especially regarding overwhelm. Yeah, really something you have to guard against, right? Okay. Caitlin says, what do you do when your client mentee has a question that you don't know the answer to? It's a good question, Caitlin. And I think I would say, like, I would ask a follow-up of like, what kind of question? Because I think a lot of times the client actually knows the answer. And so my job is to ask really good questions, powerful questions. So that's where a lot of times we go. Now, if you're talking about like a strategic question, like what should my markup be on such and such product, and I don't know the answer right there. This is something I learned when I was a professor, because when I was really, take a breath. When I first became a professor, I was 23 years old, and I was teaching students that I had been in class with 2 years before when I graduated. And so I was like terrified of appearing not knowledgeable, or, like I didn't know enough. And I worked with an older man, who was great. And he was somebody who'd been in industry for a while. But he said to me, like, Christine, you're never going to know everything. Like, you just can't even know everything. So stop trying. And your job is not to know everything. Your job is to teach them how to learn. And I loved that, because as soon as you're done with me in the classroom, or as soon as you are done with me as your coach, like, my job is not to make you reliant on me. My job is to teach you more about yourself, help you learn more about yourself, help you learn to coach yourself too. Not so that you don't ask me any questions, but that, like, whenever our time together is done, whether you work with me once, whether you work with me twice, like a lot of my clients do, whatever, or more, whenever our time together is done, you take away like the lessons that you learned, not making you dependent on me, but like helping you learn how to get the answers from yourself, how to ask yourself those questions. Let me come back around. If it's a question like, which webinar software have I used? And like, I'm really unhappy with, or you want to know which one to use, and like, I happen to be really unhappy with mine right now. I don't, but if I did, then, and I didn't have a good recommendation for you, then what I would do is I would say, cool, let me check on that for you, because I want to make sure that I have the right answer for you, and I give you the best recommendation. So I'm going to check with a few of my colleagues, because I have mastermind partners and, former coaches and mentors, and I mean, keep in touch with everybody. And so if there's somebody I feel like is going to be able to give you a better answer, then I'll go check on that. And that was my point about the older professor who I learned from. He's like, if you don't know the answer, tell them you'll come back to them. Like, there's nothing wrong with not knowing it right there on the spot. So that would be my answer, is that if it's an internal question, then I trust that I can ask the right questions to help you discover it. And I can provide you with my insight, and my intuition is like, it's gotten pretty good. It's always been good, but I've gotten better at listening to it. And then if it's like a practical question, then I'm like completely confident I can help. I can find that out for you and come back to you like with an email that night or whatever. Erin says, oh my stars, I love that you said that. Yes, the client does know the answers within them. I love that you ask great questions that supports them in discovering those answers. Thanks, Stephanie. Thank you, Erin Stephanie. I'm looking at your whole name. Thank you, Erin Stephanie. Mallory says, I have to hop off, but enjoyed interacting. You're the best. Great advice and answers. You're the best, Mallory. That's kind of creepy. All right. Erin, your question's next. I would like to build my question off Caitlin's, as this was something I have been pondering the last few days. My experience is that we are great reflectors of and for one another, which can be a wonderful experience, also a challenging one. Have you come across times when your clients are struggling with something you are currently in that moment experiencing as well? And if so, what tools do you use to continue showing up and supporting them without sacrificing yourself or losing connection to the lesson it for you? That's a great question. That's a great question, Erin, because I think whatever is personal is universal. And if we are going to talk about energy and things like that, we could say that a lot of times, in relationships and coaching relationships included, and friendships or romantic relationships, a lot of times we're drawn to people who are, either, have the same strengths or similar weaknesses, or might be struggling with some of the same things. And so, yeah, that totally happens. I think that I would say, like, I have learned how to how to recognize if something triggers me and go, yeah, but this isn't about me. This is about the client, and like set that aside. I think that, I've learned a lot of that as a career counselor. I've learned a lot of that as a professor, and I think I've also learned a lot of that as a coach over the past few years, because it does come up, and I have a lot of friends and family members who are therapists, and I also have, I've been to counseling myself. I have a counselor right now for, the grief stuff that comes up, and parenting after loss and all of that kind of thing. So I would say that I have asked those questions, right? What do I do if I'm feeling triggered, and like noticing what it's like when I feel triggered, but then also being able to like come back to it in my morning journaling and go, all right, maybe this client's helping me see something more important about me. But like, I really recognize in the coaching relationship, like completely and fully, that like, it's not about me, like it's about you. And my role is to help you with what's going on for you and help reflect that back to you and like be the mirror, so that you get to learn all the lessons you're meant to learn. And so I hope that helps. Let me know if that is confusing or unclear. But that's how I feel about it. All right. Nick says, for those who have more of a service-based business where you need to be with a client in person, do you think you'd be able to help with the creative process of figuring out a way to create services that still resonate to the core of the existing business, but can be offered in an online format? Can an in-person service-based business cross over to online and do so successfully? Yeah, that's a great question, Nick. And I think the answer is absolutely yes. I think the coaching industry is a great example of that. I mean, coaching online didn't exist, however many years ago. And now it's like one of the fastest growing industries, at least in the US. I think there are a lot of different ways to take an online or an in-person business online, even if it's service-based and even if you typically need to be in person. I think there are a lot of ways to create products and services that still serve the people you're meant to serve. And I have worked with like equine businesses to do just that, which is like something that a lot of people might typically say, oh, how do you do that? Like, I disagree. And, you could look at some of the big trainers and say, hey, they've got a pretty powerful online presence. Like, I'm sure you can think of some names depending on like what discipline, you follow. So yes. Do I think I can do it? Yes. Have I done it? Yes. Do I think it's possible for you? Absolutely. Because it's a lot of the same principles apply. I teach online business because I am really passionate about freedom and flexibility, because that's what I desire and have set my life up for. And I would say that, but if my thing was like being in person with people, then a lot of the same things would still apply. So it's just about looking at, what your audience needs and creating systems or services and packages around that, and then marketing them online, all of which I know how to do. So I hope that answers your question. And let me say, ladies, that is the last question that has been asked. So if you're watching this, you have not yet submitted your question to complete your application, then please make sure that you do so. Oh, I saw another one come in, but I will also say that if you guys have any follow-ups while I'm here and while my battery's still good, please let me know. Pop them in the comments. Erin says, that's awesome. I love that you have so many outlets. It's such a great support network. That's crucial. This is something I used to struggle with in my business a few years ago, but I've settled into the same thing you expressed. I can look at it and know what's mine and what's not in that coaching relationship. It set triggers aside to support clients. And if I need to look at the reflection, I recognize I can. Yeah. Thank you for answering that. You're so welcome. I think is this mine? Is such a great question. Such a great question. Something I ask in my personal life a lot too. All right, another question came in from Laura. Thank you for offering this amazing opportunity. Christine, you are so welcome, Laura. As a founder of both for-profit and nonprofit businesses, do you feel that nonprofits can be a viable way for someone to live and earn a comfortable income for themselves, or would you suggest additional income-producing business for someone hoping to create a nonprofit? Tying into this question, for people in both types of businesses, how do you address shame? Okay. Yeah, so let me ask, it's a couple questions here, but I will answer them both. Number one, do you feel that nonprofits can be a viable way for someone to live and earn a comfortable income for themselves, or would you suggest an additional income producing business for someone hoping to create a nonprofit? Totally. I totally feel that they can, and do know that they can be a viable way for someone to live and earn a comfortable income. Okay, here's the deal. Like, yes, we have started, my husband and I have a nonprofit. It's called Miles with Maeve. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. Yes. So we do that. We raise money we provide grants to nonprofit organizations that support pregnancy and infant loss families. My dad is the CFO of a mid-sized nonprofit, and so I've learned a lot about nonprofits from him. And you can absolutely support yourself. I actually have worked with clients who have their own nonprofits too, and like that's been the focus of our work together. So you can, the rules and the regulations are different, but are you allowed to take a salary in a nonprofit and pay yourself? Absolutely, right? Are there nonprofits like the one where my dad works? Does he make a salary for being the CFO? Absolutely, right? Does he support himself on, for working for a nonprofit? Yeah, totally, right? They have a team of, I don't even know how many people. And so, and they all get salaries and support themselves. So the answer to your question is, yeah, absolutely. I've seen it done. Have worked with clients on it. Totally. And I would suggest focus, as opposed to, I'm going to start a nonprofit and I have to look at all these additional income producing streams. I would suggest focusing on one thing at a time. How do you address, my computer just went black. How do you address shame and desiring to create personal wealth or financial comfort and help your clients break through that restrictive mental barrier to allow themselves freedom to thrive? How do I specifically address it? I address it based on the client and what's coming up, because everybody's shame is different and we've all got it. If you haven't seen Brene Brown's TED Talks, I highly recommend them. I mean, her books are great too, but the TED Talks are a great introduction to her work, and the first one especially is super funny and just awesome. So I recommend that. Her research is around shame and the power of vulnerability to overcome it and to grow. And I address it in various ways. It comes up a lot. I think learning to live in the and is something that I've done a lot of work around personally, and I also see that reflected in my clients a lot. Like, I should give away every penny I can and live on nothing because there's this in the world, versus like, what do I do with the fact that I have expensive tastes? Does that mean I'm bad? Does that mean I'm wrong? How do I embrace both parts of myself? Like, my desire to give has been there since I was tiny, like emptying out my piggy bank and like telling my mom to send all the pennies to the, little kids in Africa who didn't have food. Like, that's just something I was born with. Like, this is not about like, yay, Christine, like pat her on the back. I don't mean that. I just mean like, that's how I was made. Cool. So for a lot of years, I struggled with like that, and the fact that like I wanted to shop at Saks Fifth Avenue. Little did I know, like that was genetic. My grandma was a model for them, So I think there's an integration to explore in allowing both. Like, and I think that's triggering for some people, because they're like, oh no, it's wrong, it's bad if you're one way, if you're this way or you're this way. Well, I would invite you to look at like why that's triggering for you. My belief is that it's an exploration around how to be your authentic self, and the possibility that that can include both places, and that is a process of owning both parts, accepting both parts of yourself, and continuing to, to move forward as those things come up. Because the truth is, like, wealth means something different for everyone. So someone might have it and like feel great about it, and then their wealth increases, and then they feel terrible about it, and they start sabotaging themselves because they don't feel worthy. Like it's different for everybody. So it all depends on what's coming up for you at the time, and that's how I would say I would work with my clients around it. But thanks for that question. That's a good one. So I do not see any other questions here. Does anybody else have one? If you do, pop yes in the comments, and I will hang around. I'm gonna take a drink of my tea, 'cause you're the best. There are, if you are watching this live or shortly thereafter, there are 2 days left to apply for this scholarship. Just over 60 hours to do that math. 48 hours plus 12, just under, so 59 hours. I want you to apply. You know what? Like, there are a lot of people who've started the process and who haven't finished it yet. And if this is something that you want, then great. If there's someone else you feel like could benefit from it, I'd love for you to share this opportunity with them too. You are going to get something valuable, hint, hint, just for completing the process. Like, because I want to reward you for showing up for yourself in that way. So it's worth it. It's worth it in many, many ways to go through the application process, not the least of which is the opportunity to win 6 months of coaching with me, but also in many other ways, both tangible and intangible for yourself and for your business. So I love these questions. I love that we got to have this conversation today. I love that you all are asking such deep and real questions, and such fun ones too. And yeah, you guys are the greatest. You all are the greatest. You're the greatest. If you're watching this on the replay, let me know your thoughts, any follow-up questions in the comments, and I'll be back with you soon. I hope you have an awesome day. Even better, choose to make it a great day. How's that? This is Christine McAlister of Life with Passion, signing off. Bye.